give, and it becomes very comfortable to take care of everybody else, to jump in and help other people solve their problems. But I think often we're the last ones to get any kind of care.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I am an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can check out mailtribune.com for more podcasts and the latest in news. I am so excited about today's guest. I have been wanting Brooke DeBoer on the show for so long, and she's finally here. And what's really exciting about this is she is here to kick off our video series. So you can actually now watch Happiness in Progress on YouTube. And there's video to go with this audio if you're watching it. If you're listening to it on your favorite podcast app, you can also check it out on YouTube where you can see the video. I want to introduce Brooke. She is a filmmaker, digital content producer, writer, encourager. She's an incredible human being, and she is an honorary board member of Ashland Independent Film Festival. She's also a founding member of that board, which is pretty cool. She is the creator and producer of Fast Life. That is an Amazon Prime video series, and she has a family vlog on YouTube. And last year, she started Free Brooke to focus on her Year of Brooke, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's quite an honor.
I'm so excited to finally talk to you. I think it was probably 6 months ago when I first messaged you, hey, I want you on the podcast. So I'm excited you're finally here.
Me too.
So tell me a little bit about Year of Brooke. Why did you decide you needed to slow down, even though you have Fast Life? Why did you need to slow down and start that?
That is the funny irony in all of it, that I was working for about 5 years on Fast Life, or for something around there. And I actually didn't decide to do the Year of Brooke. It was decided for me because my health challenge was so significant that I wasn't able to do anything. I actually had to table everything and just take a break. And it was actually my doctor who I had several meetings with him, and we were doing blood tests trying to figure out what was going on, and we figured that out. And it was a meeting with him where he just said, it's time for you to ask for help. It's time to sit back. It's time for Brooke to take care of Brooke. And so that's how
do you take advice like that when you're someone who is going?
How do I take advice? I think it was forced upon me. I honestly feel like it was a God thing, because I don't feel like I would have done it on my own if I didn't have that challenge. And I literally couldn't get up for the first bit, and I don't mean to sound dramatic, but I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom without feeling like I was going to pass out. And so some things systemically were just totally out of order. And my doctor felt that it was stress-induced. And so I had to face the reality of the fact that I had a part in that. Not that I wanted to have it be a heavy blame thing or something, but I had to really look at myself and see what about the way that I was living and the choices I was making were creating some of the health challenges that I was experiencing.
Do you feel like now having that Year of Brooke almost behind you by the time this airs, do you feel like that you have been able to slow down?
I do. I have made so many changes, and I was kind of nervous when you called me because I've been wanting to share this experience, but I'm not quite to the place where I have it really written out in an organized way. And so I actually, once I got over the initial fear of what am I going to say, I realized that I've lived the experience, so I'm sure it's going to come out. And what I wanted with this experience was for it to be organic anyway. When I said, okay, I'm doing the Year of Brooke, that actually came out of a conversation with a nutritionist who was recommended by my doctor. He recommended some changes in my diet and changes in my lifestyle. And when I was working with her, we came up with this Year of Brooke. She said, I think this just needs to be the Year of Brooke. And that's stuck with me. It was something that I could kind of grasp onto, and it was something that I could kind of have as a I almost needed the structure, you know, and I needed the accountability of the blog I started. So right about the same time, or actually a few months in, I had to get to the point where I could actually get up and move around and not feel like I was going to pass out to create the blog, but I was home a lot. So I started the freebrooke.com blog and just started writing about the experiences of learning how to do self-care and take care of myself, and titled it The Year of Brooke.
I love it. I love it. So when I had my aha moment, it was like, okay, I'm doing too much. I need to slow down and quit my job, like quit a ton of stuff. And I slowed down in that way. But you're still really busy. You're still traveling. You're still creating this docuseries. How have you been able to bring in elements of mindfulness and self-care while still having a busy life?
Well, I've had to, again, through the structure of the Year of Brooke, I have had to find tools that helped me sort of be accountable to myself. And so I do things like I wake up, well, let me go back to the beginning. I first started working with a nutritionist who held me accountable to actually eat 4 times a day. I mean, I was working so hard on Fast Life. I'd stay up till 2 and 3 in the morning, and I actually prided myself on doing that.
Yeah, we do that.
And I loved my work, so it kind of disguised the unhealthy nature of it. Do you know what I mean? So I was staying up, and then I would, I would be super tired in the morning, and I wasn't drinking water. I would just power through editing sessions. I was doing everything myself, too. And again, priding myself on that, rather than asking for help, forming a team, which are all the things I'm doing now. But anyway.
What were some of the other things that you wanted to add into your Year of Brooke? What were some of the other big focuses?
The other things that I started to add, I was reading books, too, at the time, because I was seeking Camp 17 happened too, and I don't know. I think you've done some.
I haven't done it, but I've worked a lot with Lou and Chantel.
They're local here in Southern Oregon. And actually, right at the time I started working with the nutritionist and the doctor, I had already pre-signed up for Camp 17, which is a wellness camp for women, basically, and it's mind and body. And you go and you do fitness. And originally, I signed up for the fitness. I didn't really know what I was going to learn about the mind component and the connection to the body. And so I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And they said, just come and sit. And so I sat through sessions and I tried to do the workouts. And ultimately, I learned some tools that I learned about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. I began to understand that I was living in the fight or flight mechanism rather than in a more peaceful state that included rest, like 8 hours of rest, which my doctor was recommending. Taking time to breathe and proper breathing and drinking water. So all those physical tools I started to learn. And then I also learned the connection to the way that I was responding just in the world. The pushing and the fighting and the go, go, go mentality had to change. And then as I sat and was more still with myself, like I would wake up in the morning before everybody else. I would go to bed earlier, get rest, then wake up, then do my meditation and prayer. I would go to acupuncture, and I started getting massages once a week. And I had to force myself to do it because I didn't feel like, there was a big part of me that felt guilty taking care of myself in that way. Like, I don't know, I just felt like, and so I had to deal with the whole piece of not feeling valuable enough to actually take care of myself in that way. And that all came through the stillness of being quiet with myself and writing in my journal. And, if you're going full speed all the time, you don't have time to take time to look at your heart and what's going on.
What do you think it is? I think so many people are living that full speed lifestyle. Why? How do we get stuck in that?
Well, I think also what I learned at Camp 17 is we do that as a distraction or a cover for emotional stuff that's living in us deep down. I mean, I think almost every woman in my class at Camp 17 had some kind of trauma or abuse or addiction or something that they were carrying that they had probably lived with for a really long time. And I think that our world, we're all looking at images all the time on Instagram, in our media of what would seem to be human perfection. But actually, none of us are perfect. None of us are, we're all dealing with stuff. We all have emotional things. And I think a lot of us don't know how to properly get in touch with our feelings. And so, we're just living in that habit of achieving instead of slowing down. It's also hard.
Achieving feels good.
It feels good. And you get those accolades.
And that feels good.
Yeah, and that feels good. And status, you've, and if you have, a lot of people base their success on how many friends they have or, what career achievements they've had. And those are all important, but I think if you're not dealing with the hard stuff, it eventually, and what Lou and Chantel talked about also in Camp 17 is and I've always known this at some level. I've always known that our physical body is a manifestation of what's going on inside and what's going on with our hearts. And, but I wasn't able to take the time to see mine. I could see it in other people. I could encourage other people. I could see other people's pain, but I couldn't see my own.
Wow.
So,
what did it take to be able to see your own?
One of the exercises that we did at Camp 17, and I know I'm talking about Camp 17 a lot, but it was highly impactful, more than I actually even knew before I came to talk to you. And as I was thinking about what I would tell you, I thought about one specific exercise, and we were given a medicine ball, and the idea was to create resistance between a partner and yourself. So you kind of would push against the partner. But I remember Lou saying, this isn't an exercise to push somebody all over the room and be stronger and overpower. This is an exercise to work with a partner to create resistance I'm remembering it as growth, Through resistance and through challenges we learn, and so I think it was kind of a metaphor for that. And my body was weak. I mean, I was really struggling systemically with a thyroid issue and other things. And so it took courage for me to even stand up and do it. And when I did, the woman that I was working with pushed me all over the room. I'm not sure if she didn't hear the instructions or if maybe she was experiencing something and it was unconscious for her. But as I was getting pushed all over the room, I was getting angrier and angrier. And when the exercise finished, I just sat down and cried my eyes out. I couldn't stop crying. And I had to come to terms with the fact that with the anger I was feeling, but what was under the anger. And it had triggered a lot of sadness that I had had from bullying. My mom had a trauma when I was really young. So I was 4 years old. So I was living with somebody with PTSD. And so I then went to my doctor for another appointment, and I told him through tears, that this thing had come to the surface about my mom going through her trauma. And he just said, it's like you've been hanging on to a deep, dark secret for many, many years, which is exactly what they taught in Camp 17, that we, and so sometimes things happen to us when we're children. And he said there's a lot of new research out now about children who experience trauma or witness trauma that they don't have the tools to process that. And often even with adults, we're not prepared. We're not supposed to be experiencing those things,
Right.
And so I think for me, just having that physical exercise really was an aha moment for me, that I had some things that I had to work on and work through. And so.
What have been some of the ways that you've worked on that? Because I think so many people watching can be nodding their heads, raising their hands, saying, me, I have stuff to work on. How did you start that?
Oh, I've always believed that therapy is helpful, but I've always done that with my husband for marriage or with my kids when they were having challenges or things we needed to work through. I actually never had gone to therapy by myself. And it was at that time my daughter was having some challenges, just mental health challenges and things like that at that time. And so we had a therapist, and I finally elected to go myself to therapy.
I love that. I love that for a couple of reasons, but I think it highlights that we do and do and do for everyone that we love, and we forget to do for ourselves.
It's really true. I mean, as moms, particularly, I know dads give a lot too, and everybody does it in a different way, but we give, and it becomes very comfortable to take care of everybody else, to jump in and help other people solve their problems. But I think often we're the last ones to get any kind of care. And it really, I mean, and sometimes I'd be angry with my husband even, feeling like he needed to do something. But I finally realized that if I'm not willing to value myself enough to ask for that help and step up and say, I need this help, then I don't know why I would expect him to do it. You know what I mean? I don't know why we wait for other people to validate us to ask for the help. And so it was just a process for me took courage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy, especially if you're in the habit of caring for everybody else and taking everybody else under your wing and nurturing and caring, you know. It takes courage to say, I need help, and to pay for the help, because there's, you know, often a cost. There's cost to therapy. There's cost to getting a life coach, and I think all those things are good to do. There's cost to acupuncture and massage therapy, but there's also a cost to your health. And if you're not well enough yourself, then you can't take care of anybody else. So if there's anything that I hope to do with my experiences, share it so other people will get that help before they get to the total crashing point that I did.
Right.
You know, to where I couldn't do anything.
Since you've slowed down, have you seen your health improve?
Yes, the health is improving.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I actually was able even recently to have an eye surgery of a problem that I've lived with for a long time. I chose to get it taken care of. I've always been afraid to do that, and but overall my health is incredible.
Oh, that's great. Isn't it amazing what it does when we take care of ourselves?
Yeah.
I want to read this from your blog post when you decided to do the Year of Brooke.
Okay.
It says, quote, I'm now living the Year of Brooke, a year dedicated to rediscovering who I am, a time for putting myself first, letting go of old clutter, physical, emotional, spiritual, getting to know who I am beneath the have-tos and must-dos. It's a total rebuild from a healthy foundation. Tell me about the biggest takeaway. You wrote that probably about a year ago.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that for a long time, but the biggest takeaway is just, I think, and actually somebody told this to me at the very beginning when I couldn't get up off the couch. They said to me, if you were a masterpiece, like a fine piece of art, imagine a Picasso, how would you, if you had one, how would you care for that piece of art? And that is the way that we should treat ourselves, because we are all God's masterpiece and we are all valuable. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this whole thing, is that it's okay to value myself, that that's what God would want me to do anyway, you know, and that's what I believe everybody should do. Everybody is valuable, and just knowing that value, and then the rest of the self-care will follow, I think.
Tell me about finding that value outside of the accomplishments that you had achieved and you have achieved this last year.
Finding the value outside of it has
As you
been
as a human
so
being.
fulfilling, because suddenly the pressure isn't there to achieve necessarily, and the heart is in whatever it is that I'm doing. And to be honest, I don't even know exactly the direction of Fast Life at this point. I've had to get over the fear of failure and the fear of letting it go, because it might be at its point where I'm ready to move on, but I'm not quite sure. But I think the fact that I'm able to value myself outside of the work allows me to explore what is it that the next thing that I'm supposed to be doing.
I love that, and letting go of all those expectations.
Exactly.
Has there been a moment in this last year where you just thought, I got it. I got it. I'm taking care of myself. I figured this out. I know how to say no.
There have been many moments and they continue to happen. So, and there are times I'm still working on using my voice.
Yeah.
That's been a big part of this, which is interesting because the thyroid's located in this area. The body is a metaphor for whatever it is that we're dealing with. So I just think every moment is part of this experience, and I'm allowing it to organically evolve. And it's exactly what you said, saying no when I'm overwhelmed, speaking up if I need to be seen, doing something for myself if I'm feeling tired. I took a nap yesterday. I rarely took naps before, It's just
And you don't shame
things.
yourself for those things. Because I can see before me living my fast-paced life, I can't take a nap. Tell me a little bit about if someone's watching or listening and they're thinking, I want to do this. I want to do the year of fill in the name, fill in the blank. Where to start?
Well, take a break. Allow yourself to take a break.
You've got to breathe.
You have to breathe. And you have to carve out a little bit of time every day to be with yourself. And I think I would love to create a program for women. So maybe if anybody wants to follow my blog, they might see that evolving. And there are lots of tools that I have found that really work for me. I think the biggest one is getting up in the morning, having a little time for myself and writing in my journal so I'm clear on where my thoughts are at. And then if you're clear where your thoughts and your heart is, then the other things can follow.
What were some of the other practices that you've developed this last year?
I use, some very specific ones. I had a friend gift me the Panda Planner, which is the most awesome planner.
Yeah.
It's just a very practical tool and tangible one, but it has monthly, weekly, and daily planning. And it includes gratitude and celebration of your wins, too. So that's been really helpful just to kind of keep a little bit of structure to where I'm at. Other tools are, I used this wheel of the different aspects of life, because everything, I believe, together can create balance if you have a clear understanding of where you are spiritually, where you are emotionally, physically, and the things that you would like to, see manifest into your experience. Gosh, what else? There are so many things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of the wheel.
Yeah.
So maybe just sitting down, taking some time with yourself and developing goals in these areas? Is that kind of what you did?
And I think currently right now I'm reading a book by Marie Forleo, Everything is Figure-Outable. Yeah. And she has an exercise in there that I think is super helpful. This is my current, but I've done it in many different ways throughout this time. It's just writing down what I really want, and that can be anything. That can be I want a more loving relationship with my husband, or I would like to see, a closer connection with my children, or I want to produce a podcast, or I want to read this book, or I want to travel to Italy, or whatever. I think just exercises of writing down what you're grateful for and then also what you'd like to see in your experience help you get in touch with yourself a little bit more. I find writing to be a really powerful tool. To connect with your heart. I kind of think the goal setting comes after really uncovering what you're carrying. And it is a tough thing to uncover that because a lot of us have lived with it for so long. We have our habits of coping and numbing and all this stuff. And so if you're not aware of what you're carrying, it's going to be really hard to move forward into where you want to go and what things you want to see manifest into your experience. So
I love that. And it's kind of scary to take those steps to uncover that because that means you have to be alone with yourself.
Yes.
You have to be in the silence. I've heard you talking about meditation as well on Instagram. So you talked a lot about structure. Did you actually write down I'm going to focus on this for this amount of time, or I'm going to did you do that?
Yeah, each month I did a theme. So one that popped into my head was confidence, working on confidence. There were, and I hope to write this all out for people to be able to pattern theirs after at some point because, like I said, at this point I don't have it all organized like that. But I would pick words that, one was finding your delights because my doctor had said, he has this whole power, he calls it his powers program, and it's protein and outdoors for an hour or two a day, getting natural sunlight. his is more physically focused, but then one of the things he suggested was finding your delight. And that would be something like, if you remember back to being a child, that would just make you like squeal with joy. Yeah. Like it can be eating an mint chip ice cream cone or the simplest things, you know. So one month I focused entirely on delights and finding what delighted me. And it was interesting what came up, you know. It was an interesting exercise.
Do you recall?
Oh, gosh.
I just think of my kids, they find delight in so much, like everyday things. The Christmas tree is just, oh my goodness. And I'm like, okay, there's the Christmas tree.
Exactly. Well, we just get away from, I just watched the Mr. Rogers movie that Tom Hanks is in. It was a wonderful film. And speaking of that film, he talks about how we get away from being childlike. And the most important thing is to try to kind of find a way to reconnect with that. And because we were so much more connected to our feelings as children. And then we learned to hold them in when somebody tells us we're being too sensitive or too emotional, or you get bullied and it's not cool to show emotion, or I mean there's so many things that happen to us along the way that we just learn to stuff all that down. So finding delights is a great way to kind of connect back to that childlike. And for me it was like just taking a walk to the barn, you know, and like, you know, massaging my horse's soft ears or little things.
What was the biggest life-changing month for you? Was there a focus that really changed you, like, to the core?
Life-changing month? I don't know. The whole thing has just been...
all together.
I think it was in the beginning. It was in the beginning when I think the biggest life-changing moment was to declare the Year of Brooke. Like, that felt like the most selfish thing in the world for me to be doing. Like, how dare I... say I'm making a year for myself, you know, and I had to get over that. And I had to have people working with me to get over that. I mean, I don't know if this happens to other people. The more I share my story, the more I realize other people have very similar stories, but they just haven't talked about it. But I feel like we're kind of, the people that I've come into contact have kind of trained me to hide myself. Because I don't think they mean to, but they like, if you shine too bright or if you win something, or you probably have had this with your career success. I mean, people can tend to get jealous, you know, and maybe they're not doing their work, so then they're looking at you and comparing, you know. Comparison is like the worst thing we can do to ourselves and to others, you know. So I just think learning to just, and having that coaching to allow myself to shine, allow myself to take care of myself, allow myself to be who I am and be with myself and learn about myself, you know.
Unapologetically.
Unapologetically.
If there's someone, and I think you are right, that there are a lot of people in that exact same place. If there's someone listening or watching, what would you say to them about their ability to shine? Like, it's okay, speak up, be bright. What would you say to them?
Just stop worrying so much about, I know this sounds cliche, but stop worrying so much about what other people think. Because everybody has their own path, and likely if somebody's being critical of you, it's just their cry out for love, you know. And just remember that if you're shining, the world will be happier, a happier, better place. Because if everybody's doing what they love to do and doing what God put them here to do, it all fits together like a puzzle. Like, he didn't create one puzzle piece that didn't fit in. And if somebody else can't recognize that, then that's okay. By you shining and doing what you love to do and being you, other people will come along. It might take them a little bit longer, you know, and just by loving others through that whole experience too.
I love that. I think that's great advice. How have you changed since the beginning of the year to now?
Well, I'm much more confident, but it's not like I'm more at peace. I'm not so concerned about, again, what other people are saying or doing. And I also have really great relationships now. One of the things that I worked on with my therapist was through the pain of relationships that weren't working very well, we use the word reciprocal. Your goal is to find reciprocal relationships. And so I think I just feel at peace all the way around because I have support around me. I have people who want to lift me up, not tear me down. People who want to see me grow, people who have ideas about that growth, and then I'm doing the same for them. I just feel... It's interesting because my circulation wasn't very good with the thyroid problem, and so I would be cold a lot. And the word that comes to mind is just warm and like filled up. And physically, I'm not having that problem anymore either. So there's a strong connection between the physical in our body and the emotional experience that we're having.
It's amazing. If there was one thing to focus on, you know, the nutrition, the exercise, the mindfulness, the writing, one thing, because it all can seem kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
One thing, what do you think was the most impactful?
I think start with just carving out a little bit of time for yourself every day, even if it's 15 minutes of just sitting quiet by yourself and allowing yourself to sit down, turn the noise of the world off. I did a news fast, so sometimes you have to just be
Quiet.
And it takes courage and it takes discipline, especially if you have habits of not doing those things for yourself. So to carve out a little bit of time every day. If you can, grab a journal and write down how you're feeling even, just so you can connect with what's going on with your heart.
I love that. I say, because 5 minutes changed my life. 2 years ago, when I was in chaos, 5 minutes a day changed my life.
Just a little bit of time.
There was a time where people naturally had free time. You know, they were working on the farm and they looked up at the stars and they were able to connect with their heart a lot. And I think we just don't have that anymore. Now we're going. We always have thoughts going through our minds. So I love that. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I like to ask everyone, what is your number one tip to finding more joy in the everyday, in the good, the bad, and the in-between?
Number one tip for finding more joy in the day. Being in the moment. I mean, I feel like the times where I just consciously ask myself to be in the moment and appreciate whatever it is, looking for the good that's around me, I think that is the key to joy. I really do.
I think you're right. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank
I
you
love
for having me.
all of your wisdom, and I love seeing the
you.
growth through the year and that transformation, which has obviously felt really good. So thank you
you.
so much, Brooke.
It was great to share.
And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness in Progress. And of course, you can find Brooke, all of her social channels. You can find her awesome docuseries on YouTube. I'll put all the links in show notes. And again, I just want to thank you for being here on Happiness in Progress.